What would you say to John, who was just waking up out of a coma, maybe in a coma?
It'll be a long road, but it'll be worth the journey if you just stick with it. My daughter called me out 2 years after the accident that I wasn't living up to the expectation. Of all the things, that probably was a huge trigger for me to like say, okay, well, living isn't enough. Just being alive isn't going to be enough. Instead of trying to become what I was, I needed to be okay with the fact that I needed to allow myself to become what I'm going to be.
Born in 92 on the block with the Sharks. Come from a different cloth, y'all would get ripped apart. You want it diamond, then you gotta get it in the dark. We dropping nuggets like Carmelo went to Rucker Park. Now we eating from state to state, we scrape the plate. I put my eggs in a basket, took a leap of faith. I took a chance, now we grow and see the impact. Decoding success with special guests, now let's bring Matt.
John Ulsh, 17 years ago, you, your wife, who's in the studio with us, 2 kids under 10, 125 mile per hour impact speed, 45 surgeries. You can correct me on any of these statistics, but I've read the manuscript, so I get it. 45-ish surgeries, 3% chance of surviving, 8 weeks on your back, 18 days in a coma. What would you say to John at that point when you went through this devastating accident with your entire family in the car? Like, if you had the opportunity to go to John, who was just waking up out of a coma, maybe in a coma, what would you say to that version of yourself?
It'll be a long road, but it'll be worth the journey if you just stick with it.
What do you think he would have said back to you?
That John would have not had a whole lot of words, because we weren't great at communicating right at that point. Again, you know, it took days when I came out of my coma to even comprehend that I couldn't move. Took me 2 days to understand I couldn't move my legs. It took me, you know, time to even understand that, you know, first of all, my family was okay. Like, fortunately for me, by the time I came out of my coma, they have already gone home. So I knew they were okay because they were back home and not still in the hospital. But yeah, no, I mean, if you talked, you know, so when I moved into the nursing home, that John was a lot more cognitive, but still struggling with pain to even, you know, have any comprehension of conversations that I was having.
Yeah.
So, you know, that person, I mean, my memories are a fog of everything from what actually happened to hallucinations to potentially an out-of-body experience to, you know, so things weren't really clear for the first month at all.
Yeah. Walk us through that story. I mean, I've heard it. I know you've told it 1,000,001 times, but for the people that don't know the exact story, obviously we talked about the impact of that story very briefly just now, but talk us through the story.
Yeah. So, you know, December 1st of 2007, it was a Saturday afternoon. We had just left the swim meet for our 8-year-old daughter. Our 4-year-old son was with us, and we decided to go right out of the school parking lot where the swimming pool was. And we went a different direction to go home, just to check out what was a prep school, Mercersburg Academy. It was close by, because it was December 1st. It was Christmas time, and we were going to get a Christmas tree afterwards. And we thought, let's just drive through the academy and see if they have Christmas decorations up. And then a car on a straightaway 55-mile undivided highway crossed the center line the last second. So that 125-mile impact speed was just a combined speeds with no skid marks on the road. So we were doing 55, he was doing 70, and the police report said 125-mile impact speed. My son and I end up in a Lifeline helicopter, which is Penn State University's medical helicopter, and we're taken to Hershey Hospital, which is Penn State's University's hospital. Tanya and our daughter were taken to Hagerstown, which was the closest non-trauma hospital. So I spent 18 days in a coma, putting me back together. I was given less than a 3% chance, as you mentioned. So that was internal bleeding that was killing me. So my spleen had ruptured, diaphragm had ruptured. So I had a lot of internal bleeding. My left lung had completely collapsed. So I was also functioning on half of a lung. And I took 32 units of blood in that first 12 hours, which guys our side hold about 8 units of blood. So I was bleeding out. That was going to kill me. 18 days in that coma, they left me open a few days just to continue to try to stop the internal bleeding. Then they're like, well, your infection risk is pretty high. So they decided they had to shut me, and they couldn't pull my abdominal muscles shut because I was so swollen at that point that they just pulled the fascia layer of my skin. So top layer of my skin, stitched me shut with big blue sutures because they knew they'd have to cut me open again, and proceeded to then repair my shattered pelvis, my shattered back. My left foot was shattered. So all that orthopedic work didn't really happen until they, dealt with the internal bleeding. That wasn't going to kill me. So over that period of time, they kind of patched me back together, reattached my pelvis in the front with a plate and 6 screws, reattached the back with 2 big 6-inch screws, put screws through my foot, and, just kind of watched to see what was going to happen. I was on a ventilator, couldn't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And so day 18, I was able to breathe without the ventilator. Spent the next 7 days in the hospital before I thought I was going home, paralyzed from the waist down on both, and not knowing that the reality was I wasn't going home, that my family was arranging for me to go to a nursing home because I was going to be non-weight bearing for 8 more weeks. So I was going to spend 2 more months laying flat on my back because of my shattered pelvis and shattered back. And so right at Christmas, a couple days before, I moved into a nursing home and lived in a nursing home before I could even start the rehab that, followed.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel challenged because I get the honor of working with you to ask you questions that you've never been asked before.
Yeah.
I want to know why you feel like God put that detour in your human experience. A legit detour, right? Because you guys chose to take the scenic route home that day on December 1st, right? So like, why do you feel like God put that detour on your path?
Well, it's, so for us, like one of the things so we've been living, so our kids are now 22 and 26. They're all but adults. And, they were 8 and 4. And so growing up when they were younger, and they'd make some comment about something being unfair in life or, not getting what they wanted. And I would, the joke in our house was, we should have turned left to pull it out of the parking lot. Because I was like, literally, so, why we turned right and why we went through this journey as a family. I don't know. The experiences that we've been through and the setbacks and I've been asked, like, if I had a choice, would I turn left? There's nothing I can do about it. And I think this is sort of the path that we're placed on. I struggled for a long time with survivor's remorse. And, one of the answers that I received that I ultimately kind of focused in on was that maybe I only survived so my kids would have a father. The other side of this story is the other driver who crossed the center line and hit us died. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt. It was 125-mile impact speed.
And he had a 3-month-old baby.
Yeah, 2-month. Yeah,
2-month-old
baby to a fiance. And so, when we celebrate 18 years and on December 1st of this year, there's also going to be an 18-year-old who's never known his dad. And so, whether it's the path that we're on or the path that they were on, ultimately, it is, there's always a saying like, you can only handle how much, God will only give you what you can handle. And I used to have a little framed sign on my desk that said, God will only give you how much you can handle. God must think I'm a badass. Because, it's been a lot, 45 surgeries over 17 years. I have not gone
can't
a year
even imagine that.
without at least one surgery.
Have you had one this year?
No. And we're fighting it right now. I'm actually spending about 5 hours a week in a hyperbaric chamber right now, trying to heal a wound on my leg so that I could potentially go a year without one.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I just want to be able to say I did it.
Yeah.
So, because honestly, I could have gone to my doctor and had this probably fixed, but I'm trying to do it.
You want to avoid that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my doctor also, I live in central Pennsylvania. My doctor's been doing the last 11 surgeries have all been to save my leg. And he's in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, UNC. So I can't fly.
That's a ways away.
It's 6 hours to go get a little surgery done. So
that's a ways away.
I don't think I answered your question, but I don't know the answer other than I know that it happened.
Yeah.
I know that obviously we've tried to turn it into something positive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've been that way since it happened.
I mean, I think the answer of like, hey, maybe it just happened the way that so my kids have a father.
Yeah.
So my kids grow up seeing, I think another thing that just from research, obviously working with you, seeing the manuscript for the book before it goes live into this world, like the fact that the two of you are still together through all of it, I think is such a remarkable thing.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you could have quit on yourself. Tanya could have quit on you, the marriage, but you guys are here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that is a really remarkable thing to walk away. And I think it goes to show the resilience. I mean, there's so many things that stand out to me, like the resilience, obviously of self, but of also love, right? And for the sake of each other, for the sake of family, for the sake of so many things. Like, I think it's beautiful. So yeah, I mean, with the knowledge you have now, I figured I would ask that question. Obviously, we don't even need to know the answer, right? I mean, shit happens in life and we experience things and we don't always have control, although we probably like to think we do. It's more so an illusion, but I just wanted to throw that one in there.
Yeah, no, you're right. But the illusion of control is something that I had to let go of.
Mm.
And in many ways, I have tried to live that day, just that day. I mean, my family as a whole hates when I say it, but if I died tomorrow, I would have lived almost 17 extra years more than I should have.
Yeah.
And literally have adult children. Would I like to see them? Would I like to be a grandfather someday? Absolutely. Would that be the next journey in my life? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But my kids grew up with a father. As you know the story, my daughter called me out 2 years after the accident that I wasn't living up to the expectation that
being a father, right?
Of what their friends' fathers were doing. Because,
yeah.
Her father was on a walker and, not be able to play outside and function.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of, of all the things, that probably was a huge trigger for me to say, okay, well, living isn't enough.
Yeah.
Right? Just being alive isn't going to be enough. And I have to push at least to, I think initially I wanted to push to get my life back.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to face the fact that I'm never going to have the life I had before.
Mm.
I was never going to be the person I was. I mean,
how did you come to terms with that?
Time and some realities of just letting go of that. And, as you know, because we developed this together, this concept of falling in love with the process versus being stuck in these goals.
Mm-hmm.
When I could finally learn to embrace this idea that the process was the beauty and that all the learning and all the opportunity came in going through the process to get to a goal, and that ultimately the goal served no purpose other than a carrot on a stick in front of me to keep pushing. But at the end of the day, I started to love just the work more than I loved the actual achievement of a particular goal. And so when that happened, I became less driven by the goal, which is how I lived my life before. Like I was 37 when the accident happened. Very driven. At that time. I'd say I'm still very driven, but I can be patient. One thing being paralyzed and being stuck in a bed will teach you, besides humility, because I couldn't take care of myself, and
patience, right?
Yeah, patience, because I had to wait to do anything. No matter what I thought I was capable of, the doctors were not allowing me to go to rehab, to start learning to function in a wheelchair or do anything, take care of myself, until I spent those 8 weeks. And I spent almost 4 weeks in the hospital before those 8 weeks. So, I didn't have a choice. My willpower could be as strong as anything, and other people were telling me, this is the protocol. This is what you're gonna follow.
Do you feel like an individual that is harping on something that happened in their past and maybe like playing it over and over in their head, trying to move forward, but ultimately not accepting what happened in their past? Do you feel like individuals that are in that particular position need to accept to be able to move forward? Like, do you feel like acceptance was something that was like the first step in you moving forward?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think if you can't you've got to let go of the fact that you're chasing something that you want to be again. Like, you know, instead of trying to become what I was, I needed to be okay with the fact that I needed to allow myself to become what I'm going to be. And so when, you know, when you can't let go of the mistakes or the injury or the diagnosis that you didn't want, or the relationship that didn't hold, and, you know, that will just continue to hold you back. Now, can't forget it.
Yeah.
You know, I can't forget about the accident. Unfortunately, I'm scarred from sternum to across my pelvis.
So you visibly see it.
My leg, yeah. So I can't walk in front of a mirror with no shirt on and not see the reminder every single day. I live with still chronic pain. My left leg feels like it's asleep all the time, pins and needles. If I think about it right now, it's what I feel. I can't move away from it, but I can accept it as sort of the new me, and that it's maybe even a better version of me than I was. You know, one of those you know, practices when you almost die that a lot of people go through that I've talked to is, oh, what would my obituary look like, right? And I literally thought about that. I literally thought about where were they going to bury me, because our hometown is this little town north of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, but we were living in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and I, you know, when I was laying in a hospital bed, I was thinking, where am I going to bury my body?
Yeah.
You know, when I got a little better but I was still in the nursing home, I was thinking, like, what would my obituary said? What would they have said about the 37 years of my life? I feel like my obituary today would be very different than what it was then.
Yeah.
And so that's another, you know, kind of reality of almost dying, is you start to think about your legacy, what you're leaving behind, right? I would have left behind 2 kids, a wife. My parents are still alive. I have a brother. I have a bunch of really good friends. Like, you know, I've lost one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you mourn, you mourn for your loss of them losing, because, you know, I believe that they're in a better place and they're probably okay. And I would have been, if I passed away, I hope that I was in a better place. But it would be all the people that you left behind that almost drove me to constantly push myself to get better.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a huge part of me that is driven by not disappointing other people. And that included not being a guy in a wheelchair the rest of his life, not being a guy on disability the rest of his life. I mean, all those things were an option. Nobody, you know, not my family, nobody was saying, oh, you know, you got to get better and get back to work. You know.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, if you're going to spend your rest of life on disability, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, we're here for you.
There was empathy. Yeah, I get it. Talk to me about, and let's workshop this together in case there's, you know, not necessarily something to this, but what would you say are the steps to someone accepting what has happened in their past? Like maybe what you did, maybe what you've learned, wish you did, but I'm curious, like what can someone start to implement today, step by step?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, so the first thing is commitment. So, you know, we can go into, you know, the steps that you know, that I developed that you helped me sharpen. You know, commitment is a big concept, but it really is about, are you in the right place right now? Do you have the right resources, whether those are individuals, whether that's doctors, whether that's just your family support behind it? You know, there are plenty of times where I could say I really wanted to get back to work recovering, or get back to work writing or speaking. And reality is I wasn't truly committed because I didn't have the right sources around me. I didn't have the right people. I didn't have the right mindset at the time, mentally, physically. I had obviously a lot of setbacks. And so, you know, I think until you can decide that you're really in the right place to commit, you know, 1,000 people can tell you quit smoking, right? 1,000 people can tell you to lose weight because you're getting diabetic. Like, people know this. The individuals who have these issues know it. They're just not ready.
Yeah.
So I think that's huge. You have to come to terms with, one, maybe I'm not ready to deal with it. And but once you are, then you really have to start to identify like what is the source, like what really is the source of your problem, right? We have these concepts of I can't do this one thing because I don't have the skill set, I don't have the time, I don't have, all these things, and then people have 8, 9 reasons or problems that are standing in their way. Reality is that probably when you narrow down, you probably have one thing that makes 4 or 5 of them go away. And so, that was the other thing. When I started to say, what were my problems? I mean, I was walking with a walker. I had no abdominal muscles for a really long time. Even today, the whole 2/3 of them are my actual muscles. The top part's just Gore-Tex mesh.
Yeah.
And so, I have no feeling in my left foot except for my big toe, which is the only reason I can walk. There was a whole bunch of stumbling blocks that I would I got to fix this and I got to deal with this. And, the reality is what I needed to do is just work with what I had and strengthen the body that I had. And certain things could compensate for other things. Lack of abdominal muscles, but strong hips, strong arms can compensate for, inability to not have a core.
Yeah.
But when I got stuck in this concept of having to want to fix it instead of accepting the fact that I could work around it, pivot a little bit, big progress happened.
Yeah.
So I think, till someone's dealing with something and they're not ready to deal with it, it's a problem.
So if someone's not ready to deal with it though, what should they do? If they're like, hey, I'm realizing I'm not ready to actually move into this or fully commit myself, should they just stay stuck?
So here's my answer to most people, because 50% of the people I talk to aren't ready right now. So give yourself some grace. Literally give yourself some grace to be okay with the fact that, right now you're not ready. I mean, one of the things that over time, certain things were said to me that stuck. One of the things when I was, 14 years ago, traveling a ton to speak, had my first book deal, had all these things going on that were snowballing and getting bigger and bigger. I went to a friend who was a priest, and I said, I really feel like I need to question what's my motivation. I feel like I'm helping people, but I also feel like I'm being a little self-serving by using this to get out and be in Men's Fitness Magazine, People Magazine, be on Good Morning America. It feels like I'm, kind of taking advantage of this idea I'm going to help people. And one of the things he said to me is, if you're asking yourself that question, you're probably okay.
Yeah.
It's the people who don't question their reasoning on why they want to do something. And so that's sort of where I come back to give yourself some grace. The fact that you are literally questioning whether you need to make these changes means that you're moving in the actual right direction. Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Because I really think there's plenty of people who just either choose to ignore or literally are like, okay, I'm okay with this habit or this thing is going to eventually kill me, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But as soon as you start the process of questioning it, whether you are ready to commit or not, you're actually going down the path to making progress.
I love that. And I also love the fact that you were talking about, hey, I had to work with what I had or what I have. How did you get into that mindset? Because I think oftentimes we can, number one, look for things outside of ourselves and actually take away our own power or our own ability because we think we need something outside of ourselves. Number two, we see someone else doing it a particular way and we're like, well, they have this, we need that, or whatever it may be. But how did you get into the mindset to approach it? Hey, I need to just use what I have.
Yeah, I think part of it was coming to terms with the fact that certain goals need to be broken down into smaller goals, right? So you have these, big, hairy, audacious goals, right? But the reality is I needed to break them into something small and understand that, a little bit of progress went a long way. I quit trying to measure it on a daily basis and started measuring it on anniversaries, anniversary of the car accident. Where was I last year versus where am I this year? Because it is a slow slow process for me, particularly in the recovery part of it. Right.
Yeah.
So, and there were so many setbacks. Like all of a sudden I'd have a surgery and they'd say, well, you can't lift more than 10 pounds now for the next 6 weeks because we're now reattaching something and we don't want you to put pressure on it. Or we just put stents into your body and we don't, and I'm a guy who would, worked really long and hard the first 4 or 5 years to get in otherwise really good shape relative. I mean, to see me with street clothes on, people think that guy is in really great shape, not knowing what's underneath. And so when I would be told, okay, 6 or 8 more weeks, I mean, you work out, you train to run, like taking 6 to 8 weeks off and then trying to come back again, it feels like the most frustrating thing in the world.
Yeah.
And so there's where, again, learning to give myself a little bit of grace to say, you know what, it's okay. Maybe for a year or two, you're not going to, you just need a chance to sit and stew in it a little bit until you're like, all right, I'm ready to work hard again, because, the progress is sometimes slow. And when we all want to go faster, particularly people with my mentality are kind of driven for result orientation. When you measure yourself by the standards that everybody else kind of wants to put for you, and you don't actually fall in love with the process, or you don't actually find joy in sort of the grind, if you will, like whatever the grind is to you, right? If you're not enjoying it, then you're really taking away something both critical to your success. Yeah. But ultimately, like, you're literally taking away fun. Like, you're literally taking away, like, if you don't like feeling sore and sweaty and like you've just cooked your entire body from the gym, then you won't stick with it. Like, you've got to get some, almost pleasure, but some sort of, return that makes you want to do it again. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
So I feel like that's sort of the secret sauce, is that if there's plenty of people who were told they had to lose weight, lost all the weight. And we all know that we see them a few years and they put it back on. It's because they hated every part of it. Yeah. They were goal oriented. I want my scale to say this number. And when I hit that number, I'm done.
That's it. Yeah.
And I never loved it.
Yeah.
I never liked the run or the workouts, and definitely didn't like having my, food choices limited. And that's because they probably didn't take the right approach in the beginning of just like, what do I like about it? Yeah.
That's important.
Well, it's huge for anything. I mean, it was huge for speaking, writing the book, if doing the podcast, if you're not learning from it or doing something that's, like, I love these podcasts because you get to ask me questions that I didn't think about. Mm-hmm. And if I am giving a keynote, I'm setting everything. I'm controlling the dialogue. I'm sharing what I want to share. And I enjoyed the feedback afterwards more than I enjoyed the talk. Yeah. I enjoyed the Q&As. I enjoy staying afterwards and having people come up and ask me questions more than I enjoy, actually sharing my story. Yeah. So, for me, in order to keep doing it, I've got to find something that stimulates me while I'm also giving something back, which is ultimately my goal. But if I got bored with it, or again, I gave it up for a long period of time because of some other family, friend related stuff that I had to deal with. And, when I came back, it was more about, okay, I've done this before. Mm-hmm. Now I need to do it in some way that feels authentic to me, that feels like, I'm learning,
Yeah. You were mentioning, individuals like you, these driven individuals who want to go faster, right? But for you, like, this might sound crazy to say, but there's almost a blessing because you were taught patience through this process, as you alluded to, mm-hmm. right? Like, whether it was being in a coma, being on your back for 8 weeks, like, all of those moments were teaching you patience. But how can someone else learn to be patient when they're pursuing something, moving in the right direction, but not moving at the speed they want?
Well, So this is something I think like you and I might have had a conversation at one point about this, because I feel like for me to identify patients, it was initially kind of forced, as you mentioned. Like forced patients is like, you cannot pass go. You cannot collect $200.
Yeah.
You're just going to sit right here. And so for me, the patience was kind of forced, but over time I learned that patiently wait for the opportunity. When the opportunity presents itself, then I can go fast.
Yeah.
So it's a question of waiting out the time to be ready to go. And so I guess to answer your question, I think for patience comes also in the form of, the gratitude of the opportunity. So, I can be patiently waiting and hoping to continue to, grow with the speaking in the book. And when the opportunities come, I have to acknowledge them, one, and then I have to actually implement and move. And, that's a hard balance for everybody. I mean, that's probably a hard balance in your world.
For sure,
You're sitting here going, I can be grateful for what I have. I can be grateful for what opportunities are coming my way. It's a push-pull problem now. How much do I push against it? How much am I just going to be drug along by it? And, what feels authentic? I mean, what feels like right thing for you and your reaction? But then I would argue the very most influential experiences, short of the day the accident happened, were learned by the setback than they were by the wins.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when you can learn to understand that you don't have to be perfect, you just have to be intentional. That's a huge lift, because otherwise we paralysis by analysis. We get stuck waiting for an opportunity that never is going to come, because we're not going to be perfect. We're not going to be ready. We're not going to have everything.
Wait, we're not going to be perfect?
No. Go figure. So like, you're going to get, if you're going to wait for that, you'll just stall.
Yeah.
You're just never going to go forward. So, that's why, just be intentional.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Were you motivated by the you can'ts?
Yeah, a little bit. But then again, my life is sort of a lot of that you can't anyway prior to that. So it was always an opportunity to prove myself beyond.
Why? Who were you proving it to, though? Was it for yourself, or was it for, like, for example, if a doctor says, hey, John, you can't lift more than 8 pounds for the next 8 weeks, or whatever it was said, like, who did you want to prove that to? Was it you, or was it to the doctor?
A lot of times for a long period of my life is to prove it to other people.
Okay. Why?
So I was dyslexic as a elementary, middle school. I stuttered pretty significantly, really not even really getting it under control, probably until my 20s, that it didn't appear at all. Little late developer. So size-wise, I mean, now I'm 6'2", 215 pounds. I was a little, like 5'11", 160 pounds.
5'11", still tall.
Oh, yeah, but 6'2", 215 sounds a lot more intimidating.
It is. Yeah.
But I was little. So it was a lot of these prove people wrong.
Yeah.
Or that I could be better than at least how I perceive myself.
Yeah.
Again, sometimes my idea of how people perceive me might have been worse than the reality, that people probably didn't care that much. We all think people care that much about what we're doing, when they really, even as teenagers, don't care that much what you're doing. They're more concerned about what they're doing.
Sure.
So it was a lot of sometimes proving myself to others. I find a lot of my self-worth driven in being valuable to other people anyway, which does also help.
Still to this day?
Yeah, I still struggle with it. I still struggle to take a compliment. I still struggle to...
You do struggle to take a compliment.
I know.
I do know.
I also struggle to have somebody else pay a bill, for lunch or for dinner. That I'm learning to let go of that.
I did have to fight you a little bit at the register before.
Yeah. I don't know. I know it of myself. So again, know thyself, right? That is a huge value.
So let me ask you, let's go to the lunch example, right? Do you feel like you take such a pride in being able to do that thing, in this case, maybe provide lunch, right? Or a monetary exchange, because you knew there was a period of time where you actually couldn't do that, or potentially it could have been completely wiped off the table if you weren't here?
Yeah. So I understand now that I probably have been this way for a lot of my life, from my, at least from my early teens on, of being important to other people so that I could feel important.
Hey everyone, pausing this episode to share something with you. In a world of hyper competitiveness, I think the best quote that I can share with you is that there is no one in the world youer than you, and that is truer than true, which is exactly why I wanted to share with you today about Brand Builders Group. It's an organization I've been working with over the last few months. It is absolutely incredible, and today I am sharing with you the opportunity to hop on a free brand call with a brand strategist to help you break through the wall of obscurity. We are in a hyper competitive space at the moment, whether it be on social or with your podcast or with your blog or with your books or getting on stage. No matter what your endeavor is, this is an opportunity for you to hop on a free strategy call with someone from the team to be able to help you navigate the waters of making sure that you are breaking through the wall and taking advantage of all of the opportunities that you most definitely deserve. Again, there is no one in the world youer than you. So no matter what the problem is that you solve, there might be other people that are out there that also solve the same problem, but there is a strategy that can be placed into your initiatives that will help you break through that wall with speed. So I want to share this with you. It is freebrandcall.com/Matt Labrie. That is going to be in the show notes of this episode, whether you're tuned in from audio or through YouTube, whatever it is, freebrandcall.com/Matt Labrie.
So providing value by knowing things. I am a knower of a lot of dumb information. To, being able to just because I'm going through this book right now. If you called me and said, John, I need you up here, there's like 5 people that really I need you to come sit down and talk to. Can you get up here? Like I ordered you a train ticket. I'm putting you on that train. I'd be like, Matt, absolutely. But if I had to call you and say, Matt, I need you to put me in touch with 5 people who need my book, who need to read, that's a huge struggle for me.
Yeah.
But somebody reaches out to me and says, I need you to do this. Like, no problem.
You're very dependable. Yeah.
It's a hard ask for me. Because again, I also, pride myself on being, the one who helps, not the one who needs help. Like, obviously that was beat out of me after the car accident because, again, for better part of 12 weeks almost, I was have nurse aides taking care of me. I had to use a bedpan. I couldn't get out to go to the bathroom. I always jokingly say sponge baths are overrated. They're not as good as it sounds. I couldn't brush my own teeth.
Yeah.
I mean, couldn't wash my own face. I grew this beard in a coma and
never shaved it off.
Never shaved it off in 17 years. Like my kids, even as adults, I keep saying, I'm going to shave my beard. I'm like, no. I don't think the Tanya would be upset one way or the other, but the kids are like, no, you're not going to shave the beard off. Just simply because of the fact that I couldn't shave. And, it's hard to grow, but when you're stuck in a coma, you got all the patience in the world to grow a beard.
Yeah.
So, I had to learn to count on others then, but it's still, if I wasn't so bad and so much pain and literally all of the humility is gone because you're naked constantly and stitched everywhere. So, kind of broken at that point. But as I got better, I still went back to my natural, feeling of having to feel important to other people.
Yeah.
And driven that way. It's only been the last few years that even I understand that at least it's me.
So you're still like discovering new things.
Yeah. Well, so when you have 45 surgeries, you spend a lot of time getting physically repaired.
Yeah.
Right. the mental part of it, I never really even gave a lot of consideration to the last few years, like of even just saying, okay, my kids are now growing up and doing their things. We're not chasing sports and school related stuff. And the surgeries,
especially when they go to Villanova, right?
Yeah.
Like there's nothing exciting going on there. It's all
nothing.
St. John's now.
So they have a basketball team in St. John's?
A little bit, just a little bit right now.
Oh, you mean back in the 90s?
No, I mean right now.
Oh, really? I heard.
You should. You're going to hear a lot this year.
I heard they're up and coming.
Up and coming.
Yeah. So now that now that we're there and we don't have, and the surgeries weren't so much, I understood at some point I would probably have to deal with it.
Yeah. And what do you mean deal with it? Like what did you feel like you had to deal with in particular?
PTSD.
Yeah.
Just.
Did you get that when you were back on the road? Like when you were driving, were you scared or
no, that
flashbacks?
Was I mean, I read about in the book the first time that I really got in a car was when I left my rehabilitation in-house rehabilitation, and I literally had to be driven by my wife from there back to our house. Mm-hmm. And I thought about it, but literally I get that could just, because we were just driving on a 55-mile highway undivided.
Yeah.
Like where we live, there's a lot of 55-mile undivided roads. Mm-hmm. And, there were a few times when the kids were little afterwards where I'm behind the wheel driving and I'd look in the rearview mirror and I'd see them both back there. And I was like, there's not a single damn thing I can do right now if a car decides to cross the center line again.
Yeah.
And so, for some reason I was able to let go of that thought pretty easily. I talk to people, I get why people can't. I think that part of it is just my ability, because of managing pain as well, that I can kind of just block stuff.
Yeah.
And consider whether it's valuable enough to occupy space.
That's an important skill.
Yeah. I mean, I had to develop it in order to get off narcotics to deal with pain. Again, fear is very similar to physical pain.
Mm-hmm. I think they're hand in hand, especially when it's chronic.
Yeah. And when it's, again, for me, having to make the decision to get off the narcotics, which this was before the epidemic. There was no pain management doctors telling me that I need to get off, but the cycle is 30 milligrams of morphine doesn't work, so now you take 60 milligrams of morphine.
Yeah.
60 stops working, you take 90. I mean, it's not hard to understand how the addiction happens, because the body starts to tolerate it, and then you need to increase dosages. And so when I decided that I needed to get off, one of the ways we did it is through like this concept called biofeedback, which we can dive into, but it's basically learning to reroute brain waves. And one of those, they're all, like we just said, pain is very similar to fear, to sadness. And so when you kind of try to reroute your brain to not feel pain, you're not going to have those fears and sadness as easily as well, because you're getting your brain patterns to reroute themselves. And once they reroute them, they're permanent. So, it's a long process and a lot of, technical things that a psychiatrist and psychologist would work with you through it. But in the end, when it's done, it's kind of permanent. And so it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
It's a blessing because I can manage my pain. It's sort of a curse because I don't cry. I don't have those emotions anymore.
When was the last time you did cry? You looked at Tanya.
I'm trying to think. Like
Do you know the answer?
It's more than 14 years.
Really?
Yeah. Like been to the funeral of one of my best friends, and I feel something. It's just, it's like, it's almost like you're there, but you can't push over. Like, it's just because it's the same with pain. Like I kind of feel like sometimes it's like a Pandora's box. I know that my pain is there, and I almost don't want to look at it because I'm afraid if I do, it opens the box, right? And so that was a big part of, like, you said, what kind of mental therapy do I need? We did all this effort to consolidate pain in the boxes to try to function without narcotics. But at the same time, there's this fear of what's, if you opened it, are you just now rerouting your brain again? And now all of a sudden the pain's all back.
Do you think the pain would come back if the emotions did?
So that's a good question. We've had a lot of talk. So I've been pretty fortunate. I now have a therapist that specializes in soldiers with PTSD and drug addicts, and me. And he tells me I'm the biggest pain in the ass of all his clients. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I've definitely opened certain things emotionally that I definitely kept boxed up. But at the same time, if there's a fear, it's the fear is that if all the work I did to block out pain or, were to come back, that I wouldn't be able to shut it back down again.
Why do you feel like you would need to shut it back down?
Because functioning, I know what it was like to function in chronic pain.
Okay, that I understand. Yeah.
And so, I can't even take any type of narcotic after surgery anymore for pain, because immediately my level would go back to where it was. My addiction part of it, again, my addiction was a physical body addiction to narcotics, not as much of a mental addiction of people with drugs.
It was like a physical dependency type of thing. Yeah.
And the withdrawal was just equally as brutal. But I know I look at this concept of, how I function, and part of the reason that I can do what I do is because I have a really high threshold for dealing with pain. Mm-hmm. And then sort of this concept of the pain I can control versus the pain I can't. Yeah. So like what really drove me back into the gym to continue to really pack on muscle wasn't this goal of I wanted to be able to squat 400 plus pounds or bench over 300, both of which I could do today. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't the goal. The goal was the pain I could control. And the only way to make yourself sore is to push yourself harder, because your tolerance for those things, just like, building muscle, you build a tolerance where, you're terribly sore the first week.
Yeah, for
second
sure.
week. And then, so it became this idea that I could control pain in the gym. I have no control over the pain from the accident. Mm-hmm. And, if I was going to learn to give up the narcotics to mask it, then, one of the benefits was making my body stronger. And that became sort of this thing where if I went into the gym and I worked out and pushed myself harder and harder, I would be sore the next morning, but I would wake up and go, oh my God, my shoulders freaking hurt because I was at the gym. Not my pelvis hurts, my legs hurt, my back hurts, which was what I woke up to regularly. And so
it's interesting you use the words control around that, like the pain that you can control versus the pain you can't control.
Yeah. It's been a big driver for the last 14 years of just being able to have some control. Right?
Yeah.
Because we all want some control in our lives. And when somebody like me, you want as much control. You want to control as much as you can. Yeah. And when you have things that are completely out of your control, such as the nerve damage and the ongoing surgeries that, I need, then there's not much. My choices are don't take care of myself and really fall apart and be worse, or, try to control what you can control. Yeah. And for me, that's the gym. And for a long time, it was the pain that would come from doing things that were otherwise considered positive, right? Like working out. Yeah. Versus the pains that came from just the damage that's not going to go away. Mm-hmm.
The upside of down. October 7th, great day.
Yeah, somebody has a birthday that day.
Someone does.
That's why I said that's why the book comes out on that day.
It's a great present. The upside of down, when someone goes to pick up this book, if they read it or when they read it front to back, maybe twice, but they could only learn one thing from it, what would you want that one thing to be?
Fall in love with the process. It is the secret sauce.
Okay. How does someone do that? We might have touched on it here and there.
Yeah, but by not making the goal or the finish line the ultimate prize.
It's funny because I mentioned that to you and Tanya on our walk to go get pizza right before we recorded this regarding the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally said to you guys, hey, like, I know release day is coming up in X amount of days, but that's not the finish line. And I don't want you guys to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I didn't even say that for the sake of, right? But just in general. So it's interesting hearing it again from you in this position.
Yeah. Well, because here's what's interesting about it. So, because I've reflected a lot on the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I may or may not share with you. Like, I know I have a second book to write in me.
Yeah, you have mentioned that to me.
I don't know if I have all the stamina right now to go back and go through the process of remarketing. And,
you will in 6 months.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure. Like, I'm pretty sure
After
our first child was born, I'm pretty sure
you were like, I'm
good. I'm not going through that again.
Yeah.
It did take 4.5 years.
Well, this is also a child to an extent.
It is. You're right. And I think that is part of, the process right now is, so I love doing the podcast, as you know, because we talk a lot. I've done a bunch and I have a bunch more scheduled, and I literally enjoy this process a ton.
Yeah.
I like keynotes and the fact that I give something back to someone after the keynote, but Tanya will tell you, like, I crash after every one. If I
as you should though.
Yeah. If I go somewhere, I and speak somewhere.
Do you crash after a podcast?
No,
not as much, but after a keynote.
Yeah, because this is a conversation.
I think you should though. That's a good thing.
And so if it's physically exhausting for me, and I can speak for an hour and not tell you a single thing I said. I'll have to go back and watch it for me to even know. Like I could tell you audience reaction. I can tell you who's crying. I can always pick out who's in the medical field by just their reactions in a crowd. But so I have the emotional connections that I had with somebody in the audience, but I generally don't use much of an outline. And so for a 1 hour particularly. And so I generally have no memory of where I went in that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I think from experience and from talking with other people, like when you're up on a stage and you're speaking, it's not just you speaking and giving energy, but it's a performance too.
Yeah. No, it's very much.
It's a performance.
A performance. And the bigger the stage, the more the performance, because you have more ground to cover.
Yeah.
When they stick you at a podium and say this microphone, you have to take it off and walk around with it versus, fastening a microphone onto your body somewhere.
Yeah.
That kind of grounds you there. But yeah, when you get on a big stage with wireless microphones.
Of course. Absolutely.
I can't tell you what side of the stage I was on, I know I walked places.
Yeah.
I like to demonstrate that I can actually walk.
Yeah.
So, I do like to have the wireless to show people that I can actually walk with just a small limp.
There you go. Small limp. You look good for a small limp.
Well,
bring me back to this fall in love with the process. Like if we were to give people that are listening to this, like, do this, do this, do this, what would you say those are? Is it the commit, the source of like that type of stuff?
It is. I mean, to get yourself to the point of falling in love with the process, there's obviously steps.
Mm-hmm.
There's 8 pillars. Falling in love with the process, number 7.
Mm-hmm.
So there's technically 6 more ways to get there. But the only reason the 8th one is actually, take some wins, like acknowledge yourself, not so much as I crossed the finish line, but acknowledging the efforts and the work you put in. That's the 8th one. You and I have toyed around. It was as many as 10 at one point.
Yeah.
And so,
I think there was 14 at one point.
It might have been 14.
I think there was 14. I'm like, dude, we're not doing 14.
Well, that's 14 chapters though.
14 chapters.
But yeah, so to fall in love with the process means that you're finding meaning in the commitment of doing it and not meaning in the prize at the end. Right?
Yeah.
I've been fortunate enough to speak to a lot of college athletes, particularly like Division III, Division II colleges, in which seniors are putting in 4 years at a Division III school to play a sport that they're never going to go pro in, and they're aware of that in most cases when they commit to a Division III or II school, that they're not going to be a professional baseball player, or football player, or lacrosse player, or soccer player, pick your sport, and so they have committed probably since as early as 10 or 11, but, at least by the time they got to middle school and high school, to put in a lot of work towards that sport or multiple sports, with the idea that, someday, most likely your senior year of college, you're no longer going to do that activity. But the reality is nobody makes it through those years of playing high school and college sports if they hate practice, right? Like, there's no such thing as there's no great athlete out there in any sport who tells you they hate practice, right? Because you don't become great if you hate practice.
Allen Iverson, maybe.
Well, maybe, but I think he probably did. He probably loved a good street game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he probably loved to get out on an outdoor court and light people up. So he probably did like to practice.
Your beloved 76er.
Yeah, well, I'm old enough to say my beloved 76ers is Julius Erving. Give me
There you go. There you go.
But so this concept that if you hate practice, you never will commit to being even a Division II or III college athlete, right? If you hate, like, for instance, you want to have a friend who is a crazy triathlon, climbs the highest peaks in the world. Nobody ever sets out to do that, right?
Yeah.
You set out to run a 5K.
Yeah.
Right? And then all of a sudden a 5K is not enough. And then you run a 10K. And then, a 10K turns into a half marathon, a marathon, and then all of a sudden marathon's not enough. And now you're doing triathlons, and then triathlons turn into, Olympic distance, and then they turn into the full triathlons, and then you're climbing the highest peaks in the world. You don't set out with the goal of climbing the highest peak in the world. Everybody who does that fell in love with the process back at the 5K, right?
Yeah.
And then it wasn't, our friend isn't the fastest. He's not the, super endurance guy. He just literally loves the routine of it.
Yeah.
And so you just keep moving the finish line. The finish line used to be a 5K. Now it's, go climb Everest. And so, when you meet people that are like that, and that's why I love Steven, because he represents what I represent, which is you don't have to be the best at it. You just fall in love with the process, and then it just takes you where you want to go.
So one thing that I'm learning from you here is, and let me know what your thoughts are, I hear you saying that you should set micro goals and view it from a macro level. And the reason why I'm hearing that is because before you talked about like having to zoom out and like look at things from like an anniversary perspective, right? And now I'm hearing you say, not that a 5K is any, and I know you're using it as an example, not that that's a short distance, right? But what is it, 3.2 miles, something like that? But it's like, okay, do the 5K, do the 10K, do the 15K, do the 20, like step by step by step by step. Would you agree with that methodology, micro goals from a macro view?
Yeah. And that would be exactly what it is. I think the only part I try not to emphasize anymore is the idea of saying my goal is to go run a marathon. Don't.
Why?
Decide, because if your goal is to go run a marathon, there's so many steps in between. And I would say to somebody who wanted to do that, and I ran in college. I literally ran 12 miles a day. The accident happened. I functioned on one collapsed lung for almost 2 hours because I was in that good of shape. I would say, go on and try to get to the fact that you can run a mile without having to stop to walk, right? Like, I've helped a lot of people train everything from how to do your first 5K, to literally running a marathon. Because I, again, ran track in college and then afterwards became, distance runner. My brother was an exceptional marathon runner.
Yeah.
and the process is generally, set something that is realistic, get to a 5K, get to 3.2 miles, right? And if you really like it, that's just a test. That literally every one of those things becomes a test of how your progress is coming, right?
Yeah.
When people become marathon runners, sometimes they'll run halves, but as a whole, their next test is, can I do this marathon? Because again, marathon isn't running around a 400-meter track that's level the whole way, right? So if you run Boston and you run New York, very different, even though they're both in city environments. If you went out west and tried to run Denver, you're running an elevation. It's always a test, right? Can I run the Marine Corps faster this year than I ran it last year? Or, those are your measurements, not can I do a marathon after you get to a marathon, and that's sort of how, people who run multiple marathons in their lives test themselves, right?
Yeah.
But I know plenty of people who ran one and never ran another one. It was to prove a point, which was I can run a marathon.
Yeah.
Not I love the concept of how to be strategic and train and get a little faster and get my splits a little better and, make adjustments that I am making small progress. It's the same with in a weight room, right? I'm at a point now where my progress is small. If I can go up and a bench press 5 or 10 pounds in every 4 to 6 weeks, that's a lot of progress at this point.
I would say so too.
Yeah. So, so to be stuck at a certain weight, but it's a lot of weight, for a long period of time, you're not measuring your progress like you did when you started.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's really like, do you love it? Because your progress isn't going to be at the speed that you want it to be. Companies, when you run your own company, reach a certain growth really fast, and then then the growth slows. So then if you're only getting excited about hitting a 15% growth or a 20% growth, then when that starts to slow down and you're turning 3 to 5%, but you're a much bigger company, and so that dollar looks a lot bigger, but you just hate the grind.
Yeah.
And all you want is to see like the plaque that shows we grew 30%. You can grow 30% from zero.
Yeah.
But when you're big, that doesn't happen that way. And so, if you don't love being in the grind of it, if you don't like being in it and being involved, then, it's hard to stay passionate.
Yeah.
I've had this conversation, like status quo is the hardest thing in the world to remain. It's hard. Everyone reaches a certain level and says, this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to be there because, it's hard to find a balance, particularly when it's not immediate response. You don't know do I need to step on the gas a little more? I need to, let off a little bit. Generally we're either going forward or backward.
Yeah.
The sooner you can accept that, the easier it is to give yourself some grace when you go backwards.
Okay. I was going to ask, do you ever feel like there's a time where moving backwards is okay?
Certainly. Sometimes it's going to be out of your control.
Correct.
Sometimes it's going to be health related. Sometimes it's going to be, something that you can't control that's going to happen. I certainly went backwards when the car accident happened, and
I can't imagine.
Had no control.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then, and forward is also the same thing. Like, sometimes you don't even know you're going forward until you stop and, we're back to this micro macro thing. Like
100%.
Yeah. You don't realize that you've been going forward until you stop and look at how far you came.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, a few more questions for you here, John. But first and foremost, I want to let everyone know the Upside of Down is out on October 7th. You can get it in the show notes of this episode. There will be a link for you right there. Make it super, super easy for you to grab your copy. It's a fantastic book, front to back. Like, John, you did a really, really good job with it. Like a really, really good job with it. I'm excited for this to go out into the world. 3 more questions for you, though. First is a hypothetical. If I knew what John knows, how would my life be different? And it doesn't have to be about me, but like about the audience. So like if we knew what you know, how would our lives be different?
you'd give yourself more grace.
Mm.
You'd understand that there are certain things that are going to happen that are out of your control,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's okay if that puts you down a little bit, sets you back. And there's lots of ways to go backwards. There's only one way to go forward,
Mm-hmm.
and that is like one step, right? So life is nothing more than a bunch of first steps.
Mm.
You're not going to go anywhere without taking that first step. And then the next day is just another first step. And, maybe today I don't take one. I tried to every day, but I can tell you there's plenty of times that I didn't move forward that day.
Mm-hmm.
I always, talk about what's my favorite, best workout versus what's just a workout. Like in an ideal workout, I have all these things that I love to see happen. But some days, just 20 or 30% of that is at least a win, right?
Yeah.
It's just a small first step. And so I would just say, life is just a lot of first steps. And, you take first steps. Sometimes you don't move again.
Mm.
And that's just giving yourself enough grace to be okay with it.
How can someone give themselves grace right now?
Be okay with where you are with this idea of where you want to go.
Mm.
So be okay with where you're stuck, because you're not really stuck. Understand that moving forward is just simply this, go back to this intentional movement. Like, be intentional with what you want to achieve, and then be okay when it takes a few more starts, if you will.
Yeah.
It's constantly restarting, really. This is constantly
every day. Yeah. It's restarting.
It's constantly that's like this concept of first step. Like it's about taking the first step and then understanding life is just a bunch of first steps over and over again.
Whenever I have these types of conversations where we start talking about when you wake up, it's like you start over all over again. My mind instantly goes to talking about we're in a simulation, but I'm not going to do that with you, John. I'm not going to do that. But yes, I appreciate that response. Like I do think sitting here with you, I just want you to know, like I have realized, like even with this podcast, like the importance of falling in love with the process of doing this over the last 7 years. And I'm sitting here listening to you. And I'm like, damn, like you really have to love something to be able to continuously show up and maybe not get to the point that you want to get to, or it's a little bit of a ways away still, or whatever it is, but you're still doing it. You're still showing up. So that, maybe we're crazy to an extent.
Yeah. Well, it's back to this. What is your obituary going to say?
Yeah.
What are you leaving? What mark are you leaving behind?
There you go.
And there are plenty of artists, plenty of authors, plenty of musicians, plenty of really talented people who were extremely talented at a young age and weren't recognized for their talent until
they
older or after they're dead.
Yep.
Right?
How crazy is that?
It is. But guess what? If they only produced art for the recognition of it versus the passion of it, the falling in love with it, I'm guarantee you that their legacy is the fact that they left something still here when they're gone.
Yep.
If we were doing this a long time ago, we'd be saying, well, somebody burned this onto a CD and they listened to it in their car.
I wasn't around for those days. I was born with an iPod in my hand.
Exactly. MP3, right? It's
an
MP3 document, right? But the reality is that these stories were written in newspapers, written in magazines. 14 years ago, when I was in Men's Fitness magazine, and the 4-piece feature piece, and LL Cool J is on the front cover.
Sick.
Yeah, you would walk into a grocery store and there was an entire row of magazines of every subject, from cars to girls to workouts magazines, right? Now it's all online. And now I own a physical magazine that's there, but the article doesn't exist anywhere online. And these stories were told in a book, or they were in a magazine or newspaper.
Yeah.
Or they made a news article or news station, but they didn't stay anywhere. Now you're recording this stuff, and this stuff is out there for a whole new media
forever
to listen to. And, I hope that, 20 years from now, somebody can still find our conversation today, and, what you gave and what I gave has value.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I also have some art skill, and when I need some stress relief, I used to pick up a pad and do sketches. Used to paint. Now I decided 4 years ago I want to learn to play guitar. So I keep guitar next to my desk all the time. Whenever I'm stressed out, I just now pick up a guitar, and I'm not doing it for anybody else.
Yeah. Well, that's important.
I do it for me.
Yeah.
I wrote the first part of, I wrote the first part of this book 15 years ago. I started it as a memoir for my kids because they were too young to really comprehend what happened, other than that our father wasn't the same person that he was before the accident. And I wrote it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wrote this last 20,000 words this year off of stuff that you and I talked about for, last 2 years, and build out this concept. So the book's really two parts. It's like a memoir for the first section, and part 2 is really these 8 pillars. And so, that wouldn't have existed 14 years ago.
Yeah.
The concepts did. Like, the ideas of what I did mattered.
Yeah.
But we didn't give them a name. And it wasn't until I was fortunate to get together with you to say, okay, now let's force you to give these an identity.
Yeah.
You did these things, but what was it like? So it was, you were a lot harder on me than you are on this podcast. I could tell you that. But that's where it came from. Again, I had to live those experiences over and over again and deal with them before I could identify them.
Yeah.
They were happening in my life, but I wasn't either ready, or the right person wasn't placed in my life to help me focus on it and say, okay, well, that's important. Other people should probably learn from that experience because you already did it.
Mm-hmm.
And let's try to define it down into something that is, a blueprint.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's a blueprint. It's a blueprint. Last question for you. If you made it to whatever year you want to make it to, you write as many books as you want to write, you have as many grandkids, knock on wood, that, the kids want to have and whatnot. Whatever it is that John wants is accomplished. You get to the end and you could only be remembered for one piece of advice. I'm not asking how you want to be remembered, but if someone listened to this 20 years down the road, as you just alluded to, what is the piece of advice you want to be remembered for?
Piece of advice versus, okay. Well, I guess I would say that the piece of advice that I would give anyone is to remember that all the work, all the accolades, all those positives that you think define who you are, when push comes to shove and you're literally broken laying in a bed, you can't do anything, those have no value. Relationships have value. The person who dies with the most relationships, the most friendships, is probably the most well-rounded, educated, compassionate human being. The person who dies with the most money, or the most accolades, or the most home run records, or the most pick your trophy, right? I don't think those people had the life that they wanted. I think your relationships, how you use those relationships, how you give back to those relationships, is truly somebody who is living their best life.
I love that. What a mic drop moment right there. That was good. That was good.
Hence the reason I like these podcasts, because I had no idea. I had no idea any questions you could ask me today.
There you go. There you go. Again, everyone, The Upside of Down, out on October 7th. You can get it simply by going to the show notes or the description of this episode, clicking that link, ordering your copy, pre-ordering, or getting it while it's released. We will also make sure that John's socials, websites, all of that good stuff is out there. But John, thank you so much for this, man. This was awesome.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you.